Well, hello there, and I sure hope everybody had a Merry Christmas. Welcome to Talking About Pop Culture with Jake D. And we are tonight covering the greatest show on television today, The Expanse, which released on Amazon Prime just last week. And we have been treated to episode 4. And my goodness, were we treated to one hell of an episode. I am not going to bury the lead. We are going to start off with the perfect 10 out of 10 rating that this episode gets for me, because The Expanse is the absolute greatest show on television today, and perhaps the greatest science fiction television show ever made that has graced our small screens. So, what was good? Nothing was bad. And what worked and what did we love about this show? Because The Expanse is absolutely unbelievably good. You know, first, a couple of things. It is good to be coming to you back from my regular home studio as opposed to the mobile studio that I had to go live from last night. I was very, very fortunate to be offered an opportunity to pop in towards the end of Friday Night Tights on Nerdrotic. And, Gary, if you're watching here on the replay, hail to you, sir. And thank you very much for that opportunity. It was a whole lot of fun and had a really, really good time. And one of the nice things about watching The Expanse for the third time today, prior to doing this live stream, was that it is so much better than some of the other programs that I have been covering. So The Stand is a show that's been done very, very well for the channel overall in terms of my reviews on it, but it's really missing. It's one that's not giving the viewer the full experience of the great story that truly is The Stand. But on the other hand, we do get the full amazing experience from The Expanse. And joining me is Draco Argentus. Mithrir, how are you, sir? Thank you for popping in today.
Hello. Thank you for inviting me. How are you doing?
Oh, man, I'll tell you, whenever we get the opportunity to talk about something as amazing as The Expanse, I am always doing well, my friend.
That's excellent.
You betcha. So where are you coming in as far as a rating for this episode, Draco?
It's always been hard for me to put ratings on these things. I guess on a scale of 10, it's easily above 8, 9.
Outstanding.
I don't have any real any issues with it, except everything happens that I was like waiting for.
That's fair.
Is that a problem?
No, that's
is
fair.
That a problem? You get to see what you're looking for, and everything is excellent.
Yes.
And I am really harsh on giving 10s. So just to put a scale on what we're talking about.
There is nothing wrong with that. So you're coming in somewhere in the 8 and 9 territory, which, I mean, that's a raving
basically
review.
Easily it would be a 9. There's, if I were to say if I were to have any issues with this, it was that when you get right down to it, the episode feels short. But I think that's almost, for me, that's more like I want more. I want more because that happened, and then that happened, and then that happened, and then that happened, and then this thing happened, and then this thing happened, and then that's it.
And yet it was almost an hour. And yet it was almost an hour long. I mean, we got like 50 minutes out of this. I mean, it was great. So let's do a quick say hey to the chat. We've got just another red shirt here with us. Hail, sir. Glad to have you. Mary G has popped into the chat. Good to see you, Mary G. Always appreciate you stopping by the channel. All right. So, yeah, Mary G has mentioned that, Marco is a fantastic villain to hate. And you know what? That's actually a really great place to start, honestly, building off of that, because no matter how good any show is, no matter how good your heroes are, no matter how good your protagonists are, they are only able to excel to the extent that they're able to play off the antagonist. And Marco Inaros is going to be one hell of a good villain for this season of The Expanse. What are you thinking there, Draco?
Very much so. A big problem in many stories that we've had to deal with lately is the villains that are some kind of barely a shadow of villains that we had in the past. I mean, sometimes you really go for the idea that your villain can be over the top, and from any measure, Marco isn't really over the top, but he's like a dreamer, right?
Yes.
His whole basis is the idea that he wants such a grand thing, and he is, from a sense, justified in his point of view, his world point of view. Therefore, from his point of view, he thinks he's right, and this is the only way to get what he believes he and the rest of the Belters deserve. But what he's willing to do is, I mean, how spoilers are we going?
Oh, we're going to go full spoilers.
He's going to destroy the system if he needs to.
Yes.
He's going to destroy the system that birthed his very race.
Absolutely. And he's got goals. He has a specific plan in mind. He's got a specific way to achieve it through, of course, fear and the projection of power. And he is, to your point, willing to do whatever it takes. And he of course, very clearly portrayed as our villain and as our antagonist for the season. But at the same time, he's not necessarily wrong in some of the things that motivated him. Now, his actions and where he's going with it, no, no, absolutely not, right? But the motivations behind it, very legitimate grievances. And we've seen that through the first 4 episodes of The Expanse. Yes. Or 4 seasons, excuse me, not just the episodes of this season, but all 4 seasons prior.
Yes. I wish I could say, I mean, it's pretty simple, is that, I mean, it's not just, one of the things that we can get to is it's not just that we have a bad guy, but the bad guy is connected intimately to one of our prime characters, Naomi. Yes. Naomi was originally a member of his crew. I mean, on the level, I can't remember what has been revealed in the season so far, so purists and people like Thoth who remember the books are going to not appreciate my lack of recollection, but she was involved with Marco, more than involved. They actually got together.
Yes.
And they have a son, and the son she left behind to stay with Marco, and now the son is inured in his world. He's a part of it. It doesn't seem like there's separation from it, except for one thing that Marco says in this episode, that apparently he did this capturing his mom and bringing him to their little fleet of ships on his own, so the boy still needs his mummy.
Yes.
And that's also him using his understanding of probably what'll get to the boy to manipulate him a little.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I am so looking forward to seeing how that dynamic plays out over the course of this season. So I'm not somebody who has read the books. I'm just experiencing it through the show. So I don't know what's coming, unlike those who've been ardent fans of the book series. And I'm certainly convinced after what we saw in this week's episode that that interplay and that dynamic is going to be really important for how we see things conclude at the end of this season. And it's going to be the first 4 episodes that we've seen have been just absolutely fan fucking tastic. I have no complaints, none. I mean, you know me. You're with me on a lot of the times when we're reviewing shows and talking about maybe where they missed or what they could have done better. And I have no suggestions for this show. I don't know what they could have done to get you to the 10 out of 10 that they didn't do.
No, I have. I realistically is that I'm seriously trying not to be within the realm of hypnotized, but I feel so positive about the show. It's I look at the show and I know other people have always been able to be more detached and more critical of a show. Sometimes when I'm critical of a show, it comes more from a sense of it's just something that I can't put my finger on until I've gone over it several times. Now, because of the holiday, I've only been able to go over this episode like twice completely. I was working on 3 times. And that's another thing about the show. The show that works it up towards a 10 out of 10 rating is its rewatchability. And that's something the show has in spades. It's you really are interested enough in what's going on, then you could essentially go over it and you could start to pick out this little thing and that little thing. But it's working for me on a level right now that I do not feel bad or unimpressed or not entertained about it. So
there you go. And Mr. Freeze, brings up that he thinks that the scripts could be a little bit better, and repeating lines we already heard, maybe getting a little bit less of that, I think is where he's going with that as far as helping out. But
I like his comment. Bring that last comment up.
Yep.
The 1042 one. Naomi has apparently been working up to this. She's going to talk to her son, and he mentions Naomi didn't plan her speeches to her son. I've heard this in fiction before. This is something she's trying to bridge a gap. So did she not rehearse this, recite this, go over this in her head, write them down on paper or in a pad or something? That's fair.
That's fair. I can give you that one. So, running through sort of what happened in this episode 4, and I got to be honest, I'm not 100% sure how to pronounce it. It's Gagamela?
Gaugamela, yes.
Yeah, okay. So you're sort of running through the events that we saw in this week's episode. We open up with the scene with Alex and Bobby, and they're tracking some Martian military ships, right? Because these are the people that are selling through the black market all this Martian military tech to the Inaros faction. And one of the things that Alex is trying to go through is he just can't wrap his mind around the fact that this isn't just a few rogue people. This is, huge portions of the active Martian military selling off all this gear and the things that are allowing Inaros to attack Mars and Earth, right? And to assert his power and move himself forward. And there's a really good scene, I thought, between Alex and Bobby where she is trying to get him through his denial of the collapse of Mars. Right. And it was so effective to me, man. And you finally get something out of Bobby's arc from season 4, right? It's really starting to matter now.
Yes. Alex didn't get to directly feel what was going on his home world. He's been disconnected from it all this time. All the time that we've known him, he's been a Martian by connection, not by contact. But
Yes.
Bobby has dealt directly, especially last season, with the effect that the ring gates had on Mars and several things that are going on in Mars that are going to bring up story beats in this and further seasons. Now, it's this interesting dynamic because Alex was trying so hard to like touch base with Bobby because of their shared connection. And it wasn't until the end of last episode we finally get some sort of closure. And now they're continuing that forward because now they're going to research what Bobby has been leading to, what she's found out is going on. But
Mhm.
more than that, she's now also addressing this sort of beat of how Alex is not understanding, but she is the
Yeah.
one who's had the visibility, and now she's going to give him a little assistance in coming to terms with where he is.
Yeah. Yeah. And he doesn't want to believe his own eyes, right? And I feel like he's getting there in that scene, but it's so hard for him because he's got this sort of idealized vision of what the MCRN is, and seeing what it's become versus what it was when he was a part of the Martian military. I mean, I get it, right? It hits to your core when you've got this vision of who you were and what this organization was and its ideals, and to learn
Yep.
how it's fallen. I mean, that's a hard pill to swallow.
Very. It's not something. It's not something easily wrap your head around. At this point, you could say you could write this story one of several ways because, I mean, we've got a certain idea of Alex, but we might not have Alex for very much longer for real world reasons. But
Yeah.
it's going to be interesting playing forward, and it's going to be interesting playing into that because you saw how into it Alex was when he was in there listening to that admiral give his speech before the at
Yep.
the whatever you want to call it, the war college or whatnot. How he almost felt like he was in his right place there, but it's an entirely different thing that is going on, and
Yes.
he's got to come to terms with it more than anyone. And he's with the ideal person to both help and come to terms with it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Mary G, a very good question that we will get into a little bit later in the stream. Want to hit a couple other points before we get to that question, but it's a good one and an important question. So, all right. Rahesh, thank you for coming, man. Definitely love our fans in the UK. We're glad to see you here. And thank you, man. That last night on FNT, that was really fun. So that was
Yes.
a great time. But
Much like our shared friend Ginger, I was doing stupid things like family stuff last night, and
wow.
I missed your Friday Night Tights premiere, at least first run.
It was a lot of fun, man. I certainly hope to get the opportunity again, but it was an absolute honor to be among the first members on the show. That's for dang sure. But so there was a scene in here that I have to admit was a little bit it caught me a bit off guard, and I don't know how I feel about it or not. And that was the next sequence that we get to, which was Amos's visit to see Clarissa Mao. And we got I'm not sure what that is building to and what the relevance of it was. Maybe that's because I haven't read the books, but I don't remember Amos connecting with her in any way when we had the storyline with her trying to commit the terrorism at the ring and everything. So that one caught me a little unprepared. Is there something I'm not remembering on that, or uh,
And to be honest with you, I didn't know there was a connection that much either. The only connection that I am feeling right now is that Amos has lost the main connection, his sort of stepmother on Earth.
Yes.
I don't think there's any sense that he's lost any connection with Naomi, but it seems to be something similar along those lines, that he tends to involve. He tends to form these connections, at least with, especially, not trying to put this in any sexual way, but he makes these connections with certain females in his life, and it's females who have similar
brutality.
What would you call it? Levels of brutality in their life. That's probably not far off. The idea that his mother helped him get through and become what he needed to be to survive. On some level, I think that's, although I didn't see that many examples of it, I can see that sort of sense of, it's probably something that Naomi had that was similar to him, and that's why they share this brother-sister thing. It's something that could still be spoke on further in further stories, or by someone who knows more of what went on in the books. But
that's fair.
I did not get it either, but it's almost like I'm actually not remembering from Clarissa's storyline his connection either. I thought it was interesting that he went there and that he had to see her and that he took that opportunity, but I don't recall a solid connection either. Only the sense that she also was affected by this. She also did things. I mean, I didn't even think that he would see that connection in her from just the point of view of, well, she was from this family. She was one of the Maos. She was Julie's sister. I'm going to forget his name. The industrialist guy who's their father. Pierre Mao. Because part of the interesting thing is she was such a complex and unexpected character in season 3.
She was, man. I really enjoyed her story, and it and it just threw you for a loop. And we actually learned a little bit about why she was able to do the things that she did back in season 3 in this episode, because she's being held in this supermax prison, the Pit, that's specifically for, people that are straight out of cyberpunk. I mean, essentially, right?
Everyone with enhancements that might make them more hazardous, and therefore you might need more guards for them, which is said explicitly.
Absolutely. And Mikhail's making an interesting comment here that I want to respond to, because this particular storyline is my favorite one in The Expanse. And that is, he says that a friend stated that what's happening to Mars is very similar to what happened to the USSR in the 80s. And now, in fairness, not having been in the USSR in the 80s, I'm perhaps not the best equipped to comment. However, my understanding of what collapsed there economically and socially, it's, while not as extreme as what we're seeing in Mars, certainly analogous. I would agree with that. And that is, for me, it's the most interesting storyline that we've been experiencing through season 4 and even now into season 5. I've got a background. I've got a couple of, I like to joke and say I've got a couple of BAs and BSing, and that is, I did my undergrad work in history and poli-sci, specifically 20th century. So it's so these are things that interest me.
So you do remember at least what happened late 80s, early 90s after the wall went down. The idea of all of this materiel of war. That was the thing. I think the real connection is that idea that, well, you had a bunch of people in the USSR willing to take that next step into capitalism by saying, well, we've got these things that we're not using anymore to defend Mother Russia, so I'll just make a quick buck.
And they did. That did happen, absolutely. And we're certainly seeing that with Mars. So, I mean, the analogy makes sense to me. I think it's a little more extreme with Mars here, but
Yes.
it's not far
Mars is
off.
actually Mars is completely collapsing. The whole identity of the planet. There was a very necessary thing to Mars, that Mars was started on the dream of making the planet livable for humans, to do
Yeah.
whatever was necessary to terraform the world, and all of that was placed behind the ball as far as the military role of the planet,
Yes.
because Earth was constantly putting the stress on them, and they would retask terraforming spending to military spending. Now they don't even need to live on Mars necessarily, so the purpose for the red planet's infrastructure is completely displaced. Now
Absolutely.
you've got the opportunities through the ring gates. It's not just it's one of the interesting stories that is carrying forward the ultimate the ultimate what if questions, that why do something about put so much effort into Mars when you can find a livable planet through one of those hundreds of rings, thousands of rings in the ring gate system.
Yeah.
Just go out there and make your way instead, especially when not just the opportunities have opened, but now competition is starting to ramp up. Even though belters might have the greater difficulty here because they can't live on the worlds anymore, there's still going to be a percentage of them that can, and
Yeah.
now the great land race begins.
You betcha. I mean, it's an interesting parallel to Manifest Destiny back in the early days of the United States. I mean, in many ways, very, very similar. People would abandon where they had been, and they, go west, young man, right? And the parallel that we see in the Expanse, of course, is go to the ring, young man. It's no different, right? It's the same old story from human history, repeating over in a new way, and they make it feel so real. And it's there's nothing about what they're doing that, if these events and opportunities had indeed occurred, that you can't see being absolutely how people would react. And it absolutely captures me. And the only thing that is tough for me on it at all is the fact that I didn't jump into this series years ago when it first launched. I mean, beyond that, I have zero regrets about watching The Expanse, because everything it hits me in a lot of the places that work, and it feels real. The science feels so real, and the people and the society feels just exactly like what you really truly believe it would be.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's the appreciation of, as if that there is no cognitive dissonance, or at least not on that level. This is what you would expect happening if all this stuff was possible now.
Yes.
If all these events were happening now.
Absolutely.
It's only us moved into the future when these certain things are possible.
Yeah. So we move into a scene after that with Christian and Delgado, right? And this is a pretty extended sequence where the two of them are talking. And she, of course, knows that these attacks and the asteroids hitting Earth are indeed attacks. They're not random events that the Sentinels just missed. I mean, this is a focused and concerted attack on Earth, and she knows it's from Inaros. And they hear about the second hit in the Philadelphia area that's taken out New York. And she finds a way to reach out to the Sec Gen, despite the fact that, in Delgado's words, they've been completely blackballed by the entire leadership of the UN. And Christian calls the lead chef on their equivalent of Air Force One and has a conversation with her replacement as the Secretary General of the United Nations, and convinces her to switch up the watchtowers, which were a defense network pointed at Mars, right? Because Mars was the big threat prior to this. And she tells her to integrate them with the Sentinel network, which is what looks out for rogue asteroids, in order to spot these stealth tech asteroids that Inaros has sent in. And I loved this entire sequence. And it's in the middle of the episode, and yet you get just a huge shock and a shakeup to the political world of the Expanse, because after her taking Avasarala's advice and adjusting the defenses of Earth, the Secretary General dies because yet another asteroid is hit and the shockwave takes her out. I mean, for me, so powerful, right? And you're experiencing this in real time between the two of them. And they're having this conversation. And both of these people, despite the fact that they fucking hate each other, are trying to work together to save Earth. And just brilliance, the whole scene.
I mean, there was one I want before we move too far away from it, because it immediately preceded that. The next rock that hit also, that was something that there was a sudden, while Amos was talking to Christina Mao. What's her name? I'm getting her name wrong.
Clarissa Mao?
Clarissa Mao.
Yeah.
When they were talking, suddenly there's a lockdown, and the thing is that immediately before the ending of their scene, there's a great big boom. The subunit that they're in is cracked by the event. So the thing is that this is one of the excellent things of this episode, the one that tilts it toward 10. Before you even finish that scene, which is the last scene in the episode we get to see Amos in, he's several levels down.
Yes.
In a hypermax prison, and a rock hits, knocks out the power, damages the prison. He's in the middle of this thing. Not to mention, he's not Amos specifically. He's on Earth under these false credentials, as we found out. He's in a prison right now, and now he's stuck down there because of the most recent rock that hit. This was one of the things I was wondering if they were going to touch on, since he's there when the attack begins.
Yeah.
He's kind of in hot water.
A little bit.
That's the closure. That's the closure for this episode of Amos. And I'm going like, now what? Then you get on. I'm sorry to take that back, but I did not want to leave, because that's one of the things that definitely ups it for this episode.
Oh yeah.
This one puts you on a lot of, I mean, we are not going to see Bobby. We're not going to see Bobby and Alex either. They find out that this is happening to Earth, and it's like there's a moment shared where they realize shit is going down, and that's where you're left with them. They're still tasked on finding their MCR and cruiser that's involved in these shipping things, but you don't know what they're thinking. I mean, they've got to carry on with their mission, but suddenly shit is going down on Earth. Amos is in the bowels of the Earth when the Earth is suddenly rocked by a rock. And now you don't know what's going to happen to him. This is just excellent, like putting this on there, stacking these things up, saying, here comes the next thing. Want to know what happens? Tune in later.
Do you want to know more?
Yeah, I used that one.
Oh, it was a good video, by the way. I liked that, man. I liked that.
Thank you. My version of a tease. But yes, to bring us up to date, what you brought in, because I veered left and backed up. So, I mean, that whole scene is excellent. And this is one of the things is that we love those moments where Avasarala just gets to be the ultimate Avasarala. She is just,
Yes.
she is handing out orders. She doesn't even have the power that she once had. She's handing out orders. She's trying to get information. She's trying to bring all the resources that are at her limited scope together to her. They find out, she and the admiral find out I was going to go there because I had all the names in front of me when I did the
Delgado.
Admiral Delgado, they're in the room. They found out they're functionally everybody who would be able to make a decision that is on UN-1 is not picking up their calls, is not talking to them. And Avasarala is the one with all of the cards now. She knows this is an attack. She knows she's found out more information. She has more information, and she doesn't have any direct means to get that in because she's been considered persona non grata.
Yes.
But then she manages to use every tool, every card in her hand. She pulls out the 5 or the 2 or whatever, and she calls the chef.
The chef.
She is the kind of person that she would know everybody that works there, but he's not a person in influence of power. He's just the chef on UN-1. So she's got a relationship with him. He takes his comm device and leaves it on the tea tray that he brings in, and
gets her in touch with
Avasarala
the
gets to. And I mean, this is not to mention. She uses it to her best advantage. She blurts out the information right there. And the Sec Gen, I mean, there's obviously been history between them.
Yes.
But under these circumstances, I mean, this is one of the things about the Sec Gen that we're not going to be able to explore much further. I mean,
well,
it's possible that she could have somehow survived, but realistically, we saw the wing fly off the plane. It does not look good for UN-1 and its entourage.
And we do find out later in the episode that they don't even know who the fuck's in charge of the UN anymore.
Yep. As far as they're concerned, no one, there is no structure. There is no knowing who is going to be in charge. So as far as we're concerned, yeah, they're wiped off the board. But she does manage just at, I mean, this is excellently written, excellently directed, excellently edited. You find out just at the end, she manages to get, well, I'm saying this, but that she tells him right now, don't question, don't do anything, but get the message out, retask those satellites.
Yes.
Retask those satellites and do something about it because...
And they did.
But the thing is that you don't find that out until later.
Yeah.
Because we're in the next scene.
Indeed. Which jumps us back to Tycho Station, and we got Holden and Fred Johnson.
We are going to start working on the last episode's cliffhanger from Tycho. Go ahead.
Yes. So they're prepping. They've got Bull's strike team is hanging out in the cargo container, right? So there's all these shipping containers at Tycho because it's a major trade hub for the belt. And, of course, Monica had been locked into one of the shipping containers, and they assume somebody's going to come to pick her up, which was a good assumption. All right, so they drop Bull, who's the lead of the station security, him and some of his guys drop into the shipping container, and the ship that's supposed to pick it up is coming in, and instead of doing what they expect, falling into their trap with the boys in the shipping container, it starts firing fucking missiles at Tycho. and then not only does it fire missiles at Tycho, but it sends a boarding pod because, surprise, this is Inaros, and he's after the proto-molecule that Johnson's got, which turns out to be in his quarters. Not only that, but as suspected, a lot of Johnson's crew is compromised. They're part of the Inaros faction. Not only is it just his crew, but it's his lead engineer who kills him at the start of the attack. Bam, bam, bam. Takes off. And they did a distraction by trying to assault the reactor. when their real goal, of course, was the proto-molecule in Johnson's quarters. And I loved this spider drone thing that came out in that boarding pod, and it goes and it collects the proto-molecule from this compartment in Johnson's quarters, and the bullets aren't phasing it. Holden almost manages to slow it up, but the damn thing, after he jabs that piece of metal in there to stop its gears, it picks up one of its arms that isn't tied up by that piece of metal and knocks Holden off of him. And they end up capturing the chief engineer who helped architect this entire attack and this betrayal. And Monica does not get jerked away like she had planned, but the proto-molecule is gone, and it is now in the possession of Marco Inaros. That whole sequence is probably about a quarter of the episode. The effects looked great. The scoring was perfect. And just the rapid fire of the various levels of the betrayal within Tycho Station, just masterful.
Yep. It was a excellent. I mean, this was action sequence. This was the action sequence of the episode. Not to mention, it's built up by that suspense and continues to be excellent writing, or at least the subjects. The subjects. Several things happen. First, you have the ship arrives. The ship is obviously some things going on with it after a few steps into the sequence. And this is when Holden is the one that calls out. Holden notices them opening up a door, and that's when he knows something is wrong, and he yells at the ops chief, the guy from what movie was that?
Con Air.
From Con Air, the the agent that got on the plane from Con Air. I think it was.
Yeah, the character in the show is Bull.
His name was Bull.
Bull. What a good name for a security chief, Bull. Yeah.
Tells them to get out of there because he knows it's a trap. They just managed to get out in time, but it blows up the station. Meanwhile, that whole thing about the reactor, they're scramming it so they can't do anything about it because they're in a shutdown sequence, and they managed to get the robot on. The robot is not able to be easily stopped. I mean, I'm thinking,
robot, I loved it.
All the details, because it even had like a corporate insignia on it, and I'm going like, if that insignia was actually attached to something, they could sell some stuff, because obviously that's not a robot that's easily stopped. Haha. Would you like to buy some of these?
Do you want to buy more?
Yeah. And then, oh man, that part that they gave to the chief engineer, Bahia Watson, Sakai. Oh man, she shot Fred. Fred didn't die immediately. That was how Holden knew to get to his quarters.
Yes,
because he lets him know he was actually trying to eject it or something, and it failed.
Yes,
and then he says that where it is, he mentions it as he's, because one little side note, because I don't know why I found this, but it's really bad to be bleeding in 0G. It's much better to be bleeding in gravity, because our bodies can actually do something about it. In 0G, it's a very, very bad thing. So he's bleeding out. Meanwhile, his one of his second crew is getting in there as Sakai has gone down to the quarters with a few other members of the group that have been co-opted by Marcus ideals and helping him get the proto-molecule off of the station. But that's when you actually get maybe the closest thing to dissonance would be that they manage Oh, you just mentioned her, Monica. You just mentioned
Yeah,
how
Monica, the
Monica was
reporter.
actually in there when the breaching pod makes it down there. She's actually in his quarters, I guess, or something like that. She's
She
there for the
was.
event.
Yes.
And that's convenient, number one. But number two, she's also there when their group shows up, just to make sure. I guess it's kind of following up. They're following up on some point because maybe if there was going to be a problem with the robot pretty well carries out its role. But when they get there, Monica is there. Holden eventually shows up, but Sakai lets the breaching pod go once the robot has the material. Meanwhile, Monica is like the only one. She's going to be captured, and Sakai was going to take them with her. But after the breaching pod lets go, Monica is actually there. The convenience sort of pays off because with the breaching pod gone, it's venting his quarters.
Yes, and
I
of
mean,
course you got to
action
seal
sequence.
that. You got to seal that. Yep.
So they bring the door down. She helps Holden get back inside, and then you get this. You get this sequence, this job from Sakai, where she's just going like, "Too bad, so sad, you lose." It's like, oh shit. And the thing is, it's like, it's a little bit childish, but it's so like, she's really like needling them because they couldn't do anything to it, and it's just like, oh. And this is just another thing about this episode. It just says there's nothing that they can do at this point. They try their best. Marco and all of the individual pieces he set on the board, he's playing out his gambit right now. This is his game.
Yes. Wait a minute. Hang on a second. So you're telling me that you can have a show that on television that people are going to like where the protagonists don't always win in every episode? And that works?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
I mean, that's part of what makes it so goddamn good.
Yeah. 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 That's all I have to say. Yeah. It's yes. In this case, these people that we come to respect, these people that have been winning by a great many conveniences in the past, they have been the ones that have luck has tended out on their side. I mean, shoot, in the very like first season, they shouldn't have survived when they made that first attack on the secret station. We know that was like a total fluke that they managed to survive on that one run, but a number of sequences couched by all these different events have allowed them to make it this far. And I mean, they need their luck to keep running for them, but in this sequence, although they managed to survive, I mean, we lost Fred Johnson. Technically, that means we're not 100% certain about Tycho Station anymore, considering how close Fred was to keeping that place firmly on the side of our guys and gals.
Yeah, so
they are hurting now.
Who's in charge now? Is Bull in charge? Who's not a fan of the Rossi?
He is. He's not. No, he's not a fan. I mean, that's part of it. Even the people who would side with them aren't necessarily that positive about the resources that they use, the expenditures and requirements that supporting this gunship and these kind of like, well, they're siding with them for now, but
yeah. And Mary G asks a really good question here. And do we think the Rossi was actually fixed properly? Because this woman was the one in charge of all the repairs on the Rossi.
Uh-huh. Not to mention Naomi isn't there.
Uh-huh.
I mean, this is something that Mary G is full on. She was watching. This is something that I would definitely bring up because, I mean, Well, we've even seen this in another episode of another show that we talk about occasionally. Something about a little bounty hunter who seems to be surviving against great odds and caring for a child and so on, so forth. What happened to his ship before it got blowed up, and why it got found out to be blowed up in the first place? Do we really trust Sakai to have fixed the Rossi okay? Especially since Naomi is on her little sun finding trip. I don't think so.
Yeah, and Mr. Freeze, it's a good follow-on question to what Mary G just asked. Why wouldn't they have attacked the Rossi while they were there?
Or at least done something to shut it down, since they obviously do not side with it. That's a good plot hole right there, see? Well picked, Mr.
Is
Freeze.
it a plot hole, though?
Well, the thing is that
because
they are still actionable. The thing is that there was no telling that Holden would have gotten down to do anything. Essentially, the Rossi is a critical asset to this particular faction of the Outer Planets, the OPA, whatever you want to call Fred Johnson's particular variety of it. He's been supporting them pretty consistently, and they are almost his right hand, his gun arm. They are the ones that have been carrying out many of these things. They side as OPA in part of this, but I think if they didn't at least have some kind of plan to render them as a non-quantity, you'd want to make certain that they weren't going to be a factor that could eventually be used to hit you back. So, yes, I would quantify that as at least, unless the idea that Sakai did something to the Rossi to made it a non-quantity. Because right now it is a non-quantity. It can't be staffed except by crew that are not familiar with the ship. They could staff it up. Holden could fly it out there, and they could do something about it. But all of his normal crew are off on other missions. You could still crew the thing. You could still crew the thing with people that were originally loyal to Fred. But, that's also another way to make them a non-quantity, because you don't know who you trust.
Well, how do you know you can trust anybody was actually loyal to Fred at this point? There's very few. Bull...
Not all of them had to leave, just an action crew.
Bull's
probably
loyal to Fred.
He's probably an administrator. He was an ops chief. That was what he was referred to as. So realistically, that's part of him being the second in command. But like you mentioned earlier, he didn't have the Rossi's crew's best interests in mind. He was fully ready to say, they don't need all this. We don't need to spend this money on them. We don't need to do all these things for them. The engineer had a reason for going along with Fred for the time being. But, that brings up what Mr. Freeze brought up is like, we are kind of wondering at this point, is there something that they did to make the Rossi, the ability to use the Rossi against the Free Navy? Yes. Has that not been done? Or why didn't they do something about it with, they did have the ability, the engineer set up the scram on the reactor, so they had time. They did have the machine go there, and even their crew, her three individuals that her and the two individuals that went down with her in the lift, went there as backup, I guess. I don't know if they went there to pick up. I assume that's probably the reason that they went there. They went there to pick up Monica. Went there to pick up Monica to make sure, because she was going to be something else, another asset that they picked up. That didn't turn out so well. Holden helped saved her. She did a little bit of fighting back, helping herself, and she helped Holden get back when the breaching pod unsealed the compartment.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And there's a little bit of discussion going on in the chat, about the lack of the attack on the Rossi, and Mikhail makes a good point about it potentially being a lack of resources and only a singular mission that they were attempting to carry out, which of course was the securing the molecule with apparently a secondary task of capturing Monica as well.
Yeah.
And it's curious that Inaros wants Monica, and the best I can come up with, and it seems to make sense to me at least, is we know who she is and what she does. She was doing a documentary on the Rossi previously. She's breaking news, somebody who's maybe not trusted, but perhaps known by the populace for bringing things out to them and stories and things like that. So it's almost like maybe they wanted her to chronicle, excuse me, Inaros's rise to power, so to speak. I mean, that seems to make sense to me as what they were looking for her for.
That you could use her as a way to help get your message out there, especially with someone that might be familiar. She would be a news source, at least. I mean, I don't recall her being like considered a trusted news source, but that would be the only other thing.
Yeah. So Buzz Nachos, mentions that they'd sent people to the reactor, potentially to blow everything up, including the Rossi. And it's, I would say if they had pulled that off, they wouldn't have been unhappy, but it was mainly designed as a feint. To draw resources away from the true target, right? Which is strategically is smart. That's a good play. And hey, if it works out, you manage to blow the thing up, fucking great. But that's not what you're after, right?
Matter of fact, what I think my recollection, my read on the events were that the thing was going on with the reactor. The security went there once because something was going on with the reactor.
Yeah.
The events that was part of the beginning sequence of events. The ship comes in, it's not behaving as specifically they stated, and then there's this thing, the message coming in from the reactor. Then a lot of security gets sent to the reactor, and they proceed to scram it to shut it down. Beyond that, I mean, the big one that they did was they removed everybody to the reactor. So you collected all of your security forces that were critical, and you moved them away from the place where the protomolecule was being stored. They were able to do the job. If there was actually a secondary, if they were going to actually try to do a runaway, I don't know if they would have gotten away, but they definitely managed to do the feint. They managed to pull resources to a particular part of the station, and they were able to scram it, so it's not like they weren't capable of stopping the runaway reaction.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
It managed. The thing is that all she wanted to do was make sure no one was going to stop them, and Holden was, in the end, the only one that could. He had to send the one guy down to send Fred Johnson to the med bay so that they could try to save him. And then he was alone running down to Fred's quarters to head them off.
Yeah.
And that simply isn't enough resources.
Yeah. And I'm going to miss Fred, man. I am going to miss Fred. He was a great character in this show. And I do appreciate that they are willing to, similar to early days of Game of Thrones, they've been willing to go there and take out important characters. Fred may have been a supporting character in the show, but he was really important, right? And he's somebody that we lose. The Secretary General of the United Nations, okay, minor character, but really fucking important. And I don't think anybody really liked her so much, but certainly important characters get taken out. People who matter, and that's you don't have to kill everybody. Obviously, you don't need to go red wedding on everything, but a willingness to make, I wouldn't say that no one's safe, because I think, your main crew, the Rossi's pretty safe. Other than Alex, of course, he's going to have some kind of something. We know he's not in season 6, so presumably he's probably going to go out in some kind of sacrifice, getting in the way of the MCRN selling their surplus, perhaps. But that's my guess on how they're going to take him out. They'll give him a heroic exit. At least I hope. I hope they do, because I still don't know what the hell the details are of whatever it was that Cass Ambar did, but I am going to miss the character of Alex. So hopefully they give him a good, solid exit. And that's cool. I like that the Expanse is willing to go there. But we'd be remiss if we didn't discuss the end of the episode, Draco. And we get some, dysfunctional family reunion going on, of course, as Philippe's ship docks with Marco's. And then we get this speech from Marco that gets broadcast, man. And he lays it out there, right? I mean, he tells us, I'm the baddest motherfucker in the solar system. I'm in charge. Fear me. You've abused me, and you're not going to abuse my people any longer. Right? I mean, to me, that was kind of the summary of what he said.
A summary of his manifesto, if you will.
Yes.
The inners will no longer control the will of the outer planets, and the Free Navy is going to make sure that happens.
Yep.
The event that happened just before this was essentially, you find out that the Watchtower satellites were retasked. They do manage to take out at least one of the upcoming rocks, and that's when.
So that gets us to what, 4 left?
Geez, I would have to say I'd have to go back and recount, because I don't recall how many of those were headed towards Earth. Yeah, how many of those little spots had intersected with the.
I think it was 8 when Marco was looking at the trajectory, and bang, 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 and we had the one hit in Africa, we had the one hit in Philly. We had the one hit somewhere in sort of the India region, because we know that's where the Secretary General was when her plane got taken out. And then we had the one that was stopped at the end of the episode by the Watchtower and the Sentinels. So it should be 4 more.
So they could find and defeat those, or they could miss some. We do not know, but this is when Marco and his crew find out they have managed to stop at least one of their projectiles, and he's going to. This is his opportunity to do the big bad guy speech, as you said, and
it was a good one.
This is where you really get to say, this is where he makes sure it's understood. He is protecting the outer planets. The Earth and Mars have no say anymore. The outer planets are in charge of the ring gate. They will say, they will control, they will be the power, and no one is going to control their lives ever. No one from the inner planets is going to control their lives ever again.
Yeah. So I'm gonna go ahead and highlight this comment, even though I suspect this is coming from a gentleman who has knowledge from reading the books. And he says there was 9 total rocks, 3 missed, 3 shot down, 3 hit. We've, of course, only seen 1 shot down, so Buzz must have read this particular book.
Because another thing I was wondering is that one that broke up as it went by the sun, did that actually hit? Or was that just the thing that alerted Avasarala? I think that might have been one that missed, because the OPA didn't do their rocket science very well. Or at least not as well as they could have.
And they've managed to have
8 rocks still almost made it. 3 miss. I guess they're a little off.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, that's not bad. 6 out of 9, you 2/3 would have hit. It's pretty decent.
I must not have been watching the episode very closely, because Buzz Nacho did say that they mentioned it in the episode.
Yeah, I didn't catch this. Mr. Freeze, you are absolutely welcome to come on at some point if you want. Although I think we are going to wrap up this particular stream here because we've kind of rolled up kind of where we're going to get. But Grand Tour Madagascar recap and review. I'm just going to profess my ignorance, Mr. Freeze, but I'm always open to have fun on a stream, my friend. My email's in the channel description, man. If you want to sync something up, dude, hit me up. We'll get you in the Discord server. Absolutely, man. We stream a lot together on the member streams, and I'd love to have you anytime you'd like to.
Yes. Mr. Freeze's points are always appreciated. He always brings up excellent material and subjects and discussions and points in the member streams.
He is a bright thinking man, and he would be, and I'd love to have you on anytime, brother. But yes, I mean, that really wraps us up for this episode, my friend.
Great episode.
Man, what do you think is coming in episode 5, man? And we got no head of the UN. We got Marco Inaros just basically proclaimed himself to be the biggest, baddest motherfucker in the solar system. And Mars is in complete collapse. And I mean, and Johnson, the moderate wing of the OPA, is gone. you know,
all but gone. The head of it, basically, that's practically the head off of the snake, if you will, if you actually considered it the head off of the snake. But the thing is that they were sort of on our side, the side of those that we cared about. And we know that Bobby and Alex are going to continue their own investigation. We know that Amos is in a shitload of trouble with Callisto at somewhere nearer to the center of the planet than you should be well, I guess when the rock hits it, being underground is one way to avoid it. Unfortunately,
you might be buried.
It might be a hard way to the surface. Yeah.
And, hey, another monster. Glad you made it, brother. And it's I can totally de-stress now that you're here, my friend. But yeah, Amos in a load of shit. He's probably buried and trapped. And
with a bunch of people that he could get along with swimmingly.
Oddly enough.
Naomi, I wouldn't want him to whatever his name ski was, the guy that they were talking about. He's the lifer or renter. It's the guy that wouldn't leave. That Amos was commenting on when he was being let in there by the.
It's funny because I just finished rewatching the episode.
This is someone that could put up with Amos for a little while, as opposed to the 5 guys on the ship that we saw earlier in the season.
I have a feeling he could handle Amos because there's certainly been no indication that Amos is enhanced like these guys.
He's hard-ass, but he's not hardened.
Exactly. All right, man. But, to wrap up again, though, I mean, for me, I'm giving this episode 10 out of 10. It was absolutely everything I want from this show. Draco, you're coming in at the 8.5, 9-ish range.
I think I would solidify towards a 9. I mean, this part of that, like I said, it's so hard to get a 10 out of me because almost nothing is perfect. Almost nothing is perfect. And I mean, that's another thing, is that I would want to get other eyes on this, because sometimes I'm thinking I am not seeing it as beautiful as I thought I saw. If I were to do a hot take on it, I'd say like 4 points, 3 out of 4, it definitely makes 3. That's easier to put a number on, but it doesn't sound as fair when you give it a 75. This was definitely deserving of more. But yeah, I'd like some more. I would ask for some more points to be added on. Maybe even, I mean, obviously, what was it? Buzz Nacho mentioned about that, the details about the rocks, actually 3 missing, and I'm going like, I didn't get that. I mean, there was discussion there towards the. This is nerd stuff. There was discussion there towards the end of the episode, just before Marco makes his grand speech, and I'm surprised that I wouldn't have picked out those details.
I mean, I've watched the episode 3 times now, and I didn't catch that.
Well, it's entirely possible.
I'm not saying I didn't miss it. I'm just, yeah. So
I don't. Okay, I don't think that's off topic, but I'm just reading a comment from Eric K about almost nothing. Now I'm like saying, what did I say?
But yeah, another
Stream
monster.
brain.
Dude, I am with you 100%, my friend. Closest thing to perfect television I've ever seen. The incredible cinematography right away, and it made you pay attention. Absolutely with you. One of the other things that I noticed, some of the Tycho effects earlier in this season were noticeable to me as effects. Nothing like that in this episode. It looked perfect. So, and a timestamp of 30. You see, now I'm going to have to go back and watch that, Buzz.
But that would also be, I mean, one of the reasons that I almost nothing. Oh, Eric, that includes you. Yes, that definitely includes you. Not me, not him, not you. Sorry.
All right.
Thank you, Buzz Nacho. That would make sense because that would be the point that Marco gets to make his grand speech once he knows how all of his how the table played out, to use the pool term.
Indeed. Yeah. So I'm going to. I think it's. We've been. My goodness, we've gone for an hour 10. I figured this was going to be a 30-minute stream, and here we are, double. Yeah, more than double that. But man, when you were talking about something this good, you just want to go on and on and on. One thing I can say for sure is that I cannot freaking wait for next Tuesday evening because, hey, thank you, Amazon. You're dropping the episodes just a little bit early. so next Tuesday evening, when I get to watch episode 5, I am just thrilled beyond belief to catch that, man. So, Draco, final thoughts on episode 4 of The Expanse, man.
I want more. I want to know more. Give me more, please.
There you go. And I cannot disagree with a word of that. If this is your first time to the channel, please do consider watching some of our other coverage of The Expanse. If you've made it this far, please do remember to like the video and consider sharing it with your friends on social media. Absolutely hope that we have earned a subscription from you tonight. And please do catch up with us as we continue the coverage of The Expanse. And God help me, despite the fact that it's going downhill, I am going to cover The Stand until the end. And of course, our regular Sunday show, we will be missing it this week because, it is Christmas weekend. And, I got to admit, I'm having a lot of family over for a little bit of a gathering. So I'm going to have to cancel the regular Sunday show tomorrow, but we will catch you for Howling on Entertainment next week after the new year. Thank you again, and we'll catch you on the next stream.